Some Cape Town communities refuse to back down in their opposition to the city's approval of US digital infrastructure giant Equinix's proposed data centers. Social movements warn the development near Cape Town International Airport could pressure natural resources and affect neighboring or surrounding neighborhoods. Legal Resources Centre Attorney Saadiyah Kadwa and Good Party National Youth Chairperson Caden Arguel join us now for this discussion. Well, thank you so much, Saadiyah and Caden, for joining me on eNCA this evening. Let me start with you, Caden. Why were you protesting the plans to build the Equinix data center near Cape Town International?
Thank you for having me on tonight. I think there's a multitude of reasons. They can be boiled down into three specific questions, which is, what is the impact on resources for the city? What is the impact on humans in the city? And what is the impact on environment within the city? And as the Legal Resources Centre will also testify, the amount of transparency within these data centers has been extremely low. They've had every single opportunity to talk about the amount of consumption when it comes to electricity and water. They've had every impact assessment possibility that they could have had and done. And also on top of that, we don't really know as well what the exact environmental assessment will be within the areas. And finally, what the kind of capacity will be when it comes to things like noise and air pollution in an area surrounding an airport, which is already becoming quite dirty and dusty for Cape Townians.
Saadiyah, let me come to you. I mean, is the issue, as Caden has just alluded to, simply a lack of adequate information about how Equinix plans to run the data center? Or are the issues a lack of, or compounded by a lack of proper consultation with communities as well? And we're having this conversation in the context of New York City, or New York, the state of New York, being the first in the world to even put a moratorium on the building of data centers for a year, because they just don't understand the impact that these bills will have on communities going forward.
Yes, I think the issue is a bit of both, as you said. So the way we see it, the developers here have not provided sufficient information, even required by the municipal planning bylaws. So what that means is that the actual tribunal is not able to properly assess the desirability, which is one of the words in the tribunal. They're not able to understand what the socioeconomic impacts will be, compatibility with surrounding areas, impact on engineering services, on the health, safety and well-being of surrounding communities, as well as the biophysical and environmental impacts. So for us, the city says this information will be provided at a later stage when the developer submits its site development plan. Now, this is a problem because it doesn't really tell you what the impact will be. So how do we know how this will affect us down the road? And then there's other technical points that we argued about the manner in which the application that the developer made initially has changed, because now they're looking at hyperscale data center.
Sure.
And what this means is that we don't understand what the extent of this resource allocation needs to be and how it will be. It doesn't speak much about the water usage, about the electricity. So this is problematic because we feel that it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and then expand on that for me,
public...
Saadiyah. When you say it's going to be a problem, now there's a data center, the kinds that we are used to for everyday digital usage, and then there's hyperscalers. This, of course, being that it runs at extremely high temperatures. There are cooling fans that need to be run, and they use a lot of water as well. That water doesn't get to be recycled. It mostly evaporates. But explain what things like sound or air pollution have been, or the kinds of sound and air pollution that have been experienced in overseas territories, which you're worried about. Let's just give our viewers a full sort of picture to work with.
So see, the problem is that we don't know exactly the extent that it will be. Now, overseas, they've complained that, once data centers come into their communities, then the price of electricity will skyrocket. The price of services like water will skyrocket. So, although I don't have the figures in front of me, these are causes for concern because, let's bring it back to South Africa. Next to where Equinix is being planned, we have an informal settlement that's built there, and they complain about having to have multiple households sharing one standpipe. So if we're going to look at South Africans not being able to access water right at their doorstep, how are we prioritizing the development of a resource-intensive data center when our own South Africans cannot access electricity, cannot access water? So that's the sort of, we always look at it from the community standpoint. So, we're very concerned about what's happening overseas, but we're bringing it, specifically to our communities and how this will affect them.
Sure. Yeah. Caden, for the South African conversation, as Saadiyah said, is there a way to balance the fact that we do want things like data sovereignty as a country, and we do want to we do know that we need these data centers because we live in an incredibly digitized environment that allows for things like cloud storage or digital payments, etc. How do we balance these priorities, and are they in fact in contention?
Yeah, I think just to build on what Saadiyah said as well, with maybe some of those facts that you were looking for, about 50%, 57% specifically, of the water that is being used internationally within these data centers comes from potable water. And even more shockingly, 80 to 90% of that water is also from blue water, such as your dams, your rivers, etc. So all of this kind of water consumption is going to have a massive impact within the community, that's for sure. And the projections for this data center specifically is about 4.4 billion liters per year, specifically for this Equinix data center within Cape Town. And when you look at the sovereignty that you're talking about, I mean, I'm in complete agreement. I think that there's definitely a lack of digital security as well as digital capacity within the country. But what a lot of people don't realize is when they think of these data centers, they think of ChatGPTs or your various other kind of search engines, and you think, oh, well, that's what it's storing, or servers, etc. But in reality, what these data centers, a lot of them, what they actually do store are AI models that are being used in mass business projection and marketing schemes within your massive targets, your Walmarts, etc., where when the cameras pick you up and you're picking up a milk, for example, or you're picking up a block of butter, it tracks what your data is in your shopping profile, etc. So it gives corporations complete knowledge about you, like their own little personal marketing brand for you specifically. So a lot of this isn't really helpful, beneficial servers or routers or massive capacity. It's more just specifically about increased advertising capacity within the country. So if it was specifically focused towards server capacity or protecting South Africa's digital infrastructure, I think that'd be a great thing. But once again, the lack of transparency when we know exactly who's going to be operating in these data centers, since they can be interchangeable and the services can be used in different people, is just another thing to consider.
Yeah. Caden, obviously much has been made of the fact that in terms of these hyperscaler data centers and the GPUs that they use, these are depreciating assets that need to be replaced about every 2 to 3 years at a great cost. It's capital intensive. Are there employment opportunities available that one might argue, okay, we can at least depend on that?
Well, I think that's a great question, right? Because I'm someone who is a firm believer that AI is something that does not create more jobs. It actually takes more jobs in the long run. And when you look at these specific centers, once they've actually been built and constructed within the area, this is a massive, massive zone within a golf course with King Air Industria. This could have been used for a multitude of different other employment purposes in comparison to a data center. And when you look at a data center specifically, yes, replacements come in, etc., but within the actual data center itself, the amount of people that are working within that square meter space is extremely small. It's mostly there for maintenance, night guard security, making sure that everything is just operating and running at capacity. It's not something similar to a textiles factory or to an infrastructure warehouse hub, which could be used within this area as well to create employment opportunities. So I think it's something that has to be considered when you also take into the concerns of the environment. On top of that, it really makes this kind of impact for people such as the people of Nyanga who live just across the road already more of a tough future, because now not only is it going to be harder for people within the area to find employment because of the capacity that this industria could have created, but also on top of that, the living conditions due to having 40 to 80 dB now added to your area. And for people who don't understand what 40 to 80 dB means that the decibel usage within the area, so how noisy it would be the equivalent of living next to a busy main road. So now they've already got the airport, they've already got the pollution that comes with this, and now they're going to have massive noise pollution as well on top of a center that is connected into the grid and is frequently using diesel run generators, creating more smog in a city that is already suffering at a 44% air pollution status.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. But of course, I must say that we did reach out to Cape Town's Municipal Planning Tribunal, and their response to the invitation was this, that the application for the amendment of conditions for approval served before the MPT, where the MPT panel approved the application, are subject to conditions stipulated. It should be noted that, or rather, a notice of the decision of the MPT will be issued to the objector after the minutes of the meeting have been released, and the objector will then be given the opportunity to appeal the decision of the MPT by following the process and requirements therein. But it should be noted that if the approval is not appealed and the development is to proceed, the developer would still require further approvals, as you said, Saadiyah, such as a submission to the city of a site development plan. And they go on to say the city is not at liberty to provide further comment on the merits or content of this matter while the process is still underway. So thank you so much for both your time this evening. We will continue this conversation, and we have also agreed with the Municipal Planning Tribunal to have them involved in that conversation. That's Saadiyah Kadwa of the LRC and Caden Argyle of a Good Party. Let's take a break. More news after this.